Talk about sex, baby.
We gravitate towards thinking if things aren't working the way we want them in the bedroom, we need to spice things up, right? But my philosophy on this is actually, most people just don't understand the basic recipe. My least favorite question ever is, can I kiss you? Because it's, if you can't tell, the answer is no. So the driver is looking for signals, in this case, not from the road outside, but from his passenger, essentially, that are the green lights and yellow lights. And if you're careful with noticing green and yellow lights and judiciously, cautiously applying the accelerator or the brake, you won't run into red lights too often. That
Jared is very passionate. He's like, all gas.
What I need to feel from you is that you can get me 100% aroused without ever taking my clothes off.
Like, you probably saw it on camera. I was like, oh wow! Like I had like a light bulbs go off. That was not part of what we had not talked about that yet. So that was the first I've heard about that. Well,
but it's just power. Like, that is a powerful statement.
this was like an absolutely incredible conversation.
This was
fantastic. This was even better than I was super pumped about it, and even was better than I thought.
What's good, honey?
It's all good, baby.
Hell yeah, it is.
And it's extra good today because we're here in the studio, which means that we have a guest with us. Everybody, please welcome Stephanie Welch to the Genius at Work podcast here at Radio Room. Stephanie is an intimacy and sexuality coach. And for longtime fans of the podcast, we were just saying that there's an ongoing theme and thread of sexuality, of course, because this show is about our relationship in so many ways, but this will be the first time that we're having a full-on hour-long discussion about sex. So I just say, like, let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's do it.
Why don't you, I guess, just start by quickly introducing yourself and a little bit about what you do from like a really high level before we dive into the details.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I'm somebody who's taken a very long and winding path trying to learn experientially about life and figure a lot of things out. So I have a background in academics. I have a couple of degrees in that. I spent some time as a massage therapist in the health and wellness industry. And then I started taking a dive into other aspects of relationships, femininity, masculinity, intimacy. And I learned a lot of things by trying a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And eventually it coalesced into something where I found that's an area that I've been able to help people more than anything else in terms of diving into the root causes of what's going on and helping them understand themselves better, understand their partners better, and figure out how to relate, communicate, bring their natural desires into the world in a healthy, constructive way, and connect with partners and be successful in that part of life. So it's you mentioned that it's a theme throughout your discussions, but I find that it really is a subject that warrants dedicated attention, that not that many people who try to take a holistic approach to health really put that at the forefront and see how everything else that we do for ourselves ties into that, whether it's nutrition, fitness, mental health, everything.
Without a doubt. And the reason why it's an ongoing theme throughout the podcast is because it's about our relationship. Exactly. And a lot of times when, for whatever reasons, maybe because it's like considered taboo, or obviously it's something that happens behind closed doors, people kind of consider it as, of course it's part of our relationship, but it's this own like independent compartmentalized piece of it. And all the stuff that you see on like everywhere else is the real relationship, but it's not. It's like absolutely foundational to the health and happiness of the individuals and the relationship itself.
Exactly. Like, we have a healthy sexual relationship, and there's like, we talk about it, and there's one episode where we did like a Q&A, and one of the questions was something along the lines of like, all Jared does is talk about sex with Katelyn, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, we're a married couple. We have a healthy sexual relationship. Like, I'm grateful and thankful for that. Like, why? Like, I don't understand, but it is right. Like, you don't talk about that. That's you keep your mouth shut when you want to talk about your sex.
So the reason, like, we met, I guess maybe about a month or so ago at an event where it was a dinner, and I wouldn't even say it was a networking event. I wouldn't know how to describe it. It was just a very nice, pleasant dinner where we got to the opportunity to sit next to each other and chat. And to say that you're an intimacy and sexuality coach, I think is really doing it not the justice that it deserves, because what you're doing after we had the opportunity to chat was, I think, revolutionary and groundbreaking in a lot of ways. And the way that you broke down the specifics, and we'll get into all the different like theories and philosophies and analogies that you use to describe what makes a healthy, intimate interaction and what the things to look for, I thought was enlightening, and so it struck so true, yet it was also said in such a way that I'd never heard before. And I was like, oh, we have to, as couples coaches, we need to pull you into things that we are doing for our clients and for our retreat, that like the one we're having next week, but also like this was an obvious discussion. So I guess maybe we can get a little bit into, to start, just your background, your story. You said that you were a massage therapist, and maybe just talk about the foray into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I have spent my whole life exploring, trying to learn more about how to live as a good, healthy human. You know, when I was growing up, I was exposed a bit to religious ideas, and I definitely found that those were not giving me the insights I needed on how to live a good life in the way it was presented to me at that time. And so I started looking in other directions. The lens that has been most helpful to me throughout my whole life has to do with evolution, evolutionary biology and psychology. And that is something that I've looked at many different things from that lens. But I didn't know when I started, I had no plan. You know, my background, as I said, is in academics and humanities. I have a master's degree in art history. But I started to see around my mid-20s that there was a lot going on in people's lives, that the work I was doing wasn't helping people in their day-to-day lives. You know, it's nice to be in the basement of the Museum of Fine Arts and cataloging ancient Nubian artifacts, but when you're watching people's health around you deteriorate and the pain and just dysfunction that they're in, it starts to seem like that people need something more than that. So I moved from that area into massage therapy as a way to start getting a better understanding on holistic health. And I learned a ton of things, you know, over 7 years doing that full time, about people's bodies and the experiences that they were having, the patterns that were going on. I was exploring nutrition and physical health and development through that. But also during that time, there was a degree to which I was kind of losing touch with my femininity and connection to certain aspects of that. And a little bit of it had to do with the way that the massage profession exists. It was created to differentiate therapeutic, legitimate work from anything that could be mistaken for prostitution. And which makes total sense when you're in like a physical therapy clinic and you've got people with pulled hamstrings and you're trying to rehabilitate. Totally great. But it's also, it causes you to have to set aside that kind of holistic view of people. There's this box in the middle of the body that we can't touch and we can never talk about it. And that struck me as not as holistic as I wanted it to be. And many things about how I was taking care of myself and presenting myself as the massage therapist started taking away little aspects of how I physically presented kind of my femininity. And fingernails were the first day of massage school. They say, well, you can't have fingernails because your hands are on people, so you have to do that. You can't have long hair that's going to be dangling and hanging on to people. You can't have jewelry that's going to be getting in the way, and you can't have like many of these things. And you want to dress as modestly as you can because you never want to give anybody the wrong impression. So about 2014 or 15, I was ending a relationship and I was trying to get out there and dating again. And for the second time in my life, there's more backstory on that too, nobody would go out with me. I could not get a date to save my life. And I thought, I'm missing something here. And I looked in the mirror and I thought, I kind of look like a boy. and I think that's probably not working for me. And I need to understand more about how I relate, how I express myself and how I relate in the world. And then I started working on that for a couple of years. And then in late 2016, something came across my radar that I was aware of, but I'd never given it any thought. And it had to do with the legal sex industry in Nevada. And I was exposed to the idea that existed. I knew somewhere that it existed. But when it came across my radar, I started thinking about it as, there's this huge industry trying to solve problems for people who are not getting, fulfillment and satisfaction in this part of their lives. And I'm not experiencing what I want in that either. And as I like to learn things by doing them, I thought this is a really interesting place that I've never touched on this side of life. I've always had a very open-minded ideas around it, but I thought this is the place I need to go to learn more about what people are looking for. What are they're coming in with tremendous amounts of money that they're willing to spend to try to solve a problem because their lives are not what they want them to be. And, so I within a couple of days, I actually decided I needed to quit my job and move out and explore this.
Were you a massage therapist at that time?
I was still a massage therapist, 100% above board, never crossed a line, nothing. And I was like, I'm going to swing the pendulum all the way the other way and figure out what this is about and see how it ties into what people need in their lives. Because as much as, you guys were saying, this is an important part of people's lives and you can take care of yourself in every other way. But if you're not able to express that part of yourself, it can be just completely stifling. And, we don't get into romantic relationships to be platonic. That's not the point. You can have all the friends you want, but we're looking to manifest this and be able to express that part of ourselves. So I went there, I explored, I learned, I experienced so many things. I saw the degree to which people are suffering, and I started seeing the patterns too in what people would come in and say, this is what I'm really looking for. This is what I'm really wanting. And then seeing how the industry caters to the desires in a way that is totally entertainment and performative based and actually makes people's lives worse because it teaches the wrong things. It gives a sense of false positive feedback when people are not succeeding. And eventually, through a few other steps, this led me to figure out how to take an authentic approach to saying, if I actually know how my body works and I know the things that I like and I know what turns me on, I can actually teach somebody how to do those things and we can have better experiences and they can improve and learn what to do. There's, of course, everybody you meet is different, but you can take a lot of information from figuring certain things out. So that led me to a completely different type of practice from that experience of what happens when people are seeking this sort of escape entertainment thing versus if they tried to learn from somebody and actually make things better. And it's like, I look at it like when you think about working out and training, you can go to a gym and hire a personal trainer who can give you some clues as to where to start and, what machines might be useful for your goals and what weight you should start with and how is your form doing and which exercises do you want. But we don't have a sex education system that teaches anybody anything like that about how to have a good interaction with somebody. Even just the basics, the minimum nuts and bolts, people look to things like porn for. And it's a terrible example. It's exactly the same thing of someone creating a theatrical performance and making it seem like they're having a certain experience that's not accurate. So that was a lot there. I'm sure I've got lots of questions.
Perfect.
That was outstanding.
That was a perfect explanation. No, go ahead.
Yes, I have a lot to say. First off, I am a sucker for analogies, and you have nothing but good analogies, including the personal training ones. So relevant there. I think there's a lot to kind of like that could be dissected from there, and with the time we have, there's only so much we can go into. But I think looking at like the conversation we were having earlier around how a sex conversation seems like it's compartmentalized and different and separate from like the rest of your relationship, and the way you're referring to being a massage therapist, it's like you're not allowed to have nails, you're not allowed to have hair, you want to look as like, you know, I guess
Like modest.
modest as possible and reserved as possible, and then you're only supposed to massage things that, like you said, are outside of like a particular box. And once again, like what that's doing is it's taking a massive part of what is actually therapeutic in so many ways about massage therapy, where you need to be able to feel what the other person is feeling. And like when I didn't know if you had asked me 10 years ago what does a massage therapist do, I would think like, oh, you know the different muscles and you know like the movements to do on the muscle, but it's so much more than that. Like you have to, I remember our one friend who's a fantastic massage therapist, the best massage I've ever had, she said that she uses tantric sexual energy to like make sure that she knows like, I guess, what is going to have the biggest impact on you and make you feel relaxed, and it works, versus like going into a massage envy and like it's the same like cookie cutter massage that you get every single time, let's say. The same thing goes for here. So now it seems like you had a very restricted experience in the massage therapist space, and you said there's all this other stuff. Once you go down that rabbit hole, there's so much other opportunity to unravel there, and so much more healing to be done. How can I do? And then you found that the conditions, or the people were being conditioned to believe that what sex is and what intimacy is very different from what it actually should be. Is that like a fair way to kind of wrap it up?
Definitely too. I mean, as far as people being taught and seeing things differently than it's supposed to be, I mean, just the fact that we don't talk about these kind of things very openly. There's a lot of shame and stigma around it, that it's something that it's not just is this practical in the situation of, you know, should we be addressing this for this person, but there's this, you know, big judgment about what's right and wrong about it, and not really connecting to people in their like complete humanity. But it also has lent to these industries that have tried to fill in the gap in some way. Of course, as you know, we mentioned like porn is one thing, and every aspect of the sexual commerce industry. And you know, one of the running themes that I heard over and over again when I worked out there in terms of what people were really looking for, and I will say it's extremely dominant around male clientele and female providers. It's extremely biased in that regard in the parts that I am most familiar with. And this ties into some of the evolutionary biology stuff of female choice, and our reproductive strategies lead us to make different priorities and things. But in any case, what kept happening when I look for patterns again, right? And the biggest pattern that kept coming up is every time somebody would come in to talk to me to negotiate, you know, like what do we want to do together, the request that I would get would sound almost just like this. It would say, I'm not like all the other guys out there. I don't just want to get off. I really care about pleasing women. Of course, I'm thinking, okay, you all say the same thing. You are like all the other guys out there. This is the theme. But so if that's what this underlying drive and desire is, why are the women in your lives not pleased? Why are you here? Why do you need me? Why is this not working for you? And then when it comes to the industry, what the providers quickly learn is that's what the men are asking for. So the way to make the most money is to seem to be pleased by whatever he's doing.
Put on a show.
It's entirely a theatrical performance for almost everybody out there who's a provider, which provides all this false positive feedback for whatever he was doing that wasn't working before. That's why he showed up. So it's when I experienced it, that was the real downside. I chose to go somewhere where things were safe and legal and I didn't have to deal with any of the complications around it. So I could see it's not the nature of doing the work itself that's problematic. It's this dynamic that it creates of inauthenticity.
Yeah.
And which, again, is the same thing that happens in like the porn industry. They're showing something that looks cinematically and graphically exciting and dramatic, and the woman appears to be enjoying whatever the heck is happening that was, imposed for whatever reasons.
Not just enjoying, but like a
Extreme.
Right.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
over the top cartoonish level of enjoyment.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So it completely sends all the wrong signals, and but there's nothing else to go on. So people, just take some of those things. And so
I'll just pause you there because I obviously grew up watching a tremendous amount of porn. I'll go that far. I'll say a tremendous amount of porn in my teens and in my 20s. I have been completely away from it for almost 3 years now. And honestly, if you asked me 3.5 years ago if I would ever do it, I would say no, there's no way I would. It's been one of the biggest life-changing habits that I've cut out in a serious way. But I think it's, to your point, if boys essentially are growing up watching porn and that is what their understanding of sex is, and then they get into a relationship with, let's say you're in high school and you get into a relationship with a girl and then you think that that's what sex is, and then you start acting that way in a sexual interaction, and then the women start to believe, the girls start to believe that that's also what is expected,
For sure.
and they're also being reinforced that same image and that same idea through
whatever porn they're watching as well. Now everybody, and through these the other performative acts that you might see in like where you were working in Nevada, all of a sudden that is like the idea of what sex is supposed to be. It gets continuously reinforced. Nobody knows that that's not what it should be, and then the vibes are just off.
Well,
the vibes are just off at that point.
I think sex can be that if like
could
both
be.
partners are like wanting to have like rough, wild, animal type sex. But like I think what you're talking about is that your clients are coming to you because they're struggling to connect with their partners, or like struggling sexually,
yeah,
because
and
they're not learning to like how to enjoy the sexual experience. They just want to get it done.
yeah, and yeah, sometimes things can look like that, and both people can be having
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
But instead of taking that as kind of the baseline, what we need to be shooting for, I often tell people, we gravitate towards thinking if things aren't working the way we want them in the bedroom, we need to spice things up, right? But my philosophy on this is actually most people just don't understand the basic recipe. There's the single ingredient that really makes it work better than anything else is just presence and the ability to connect and like tune in to your own body and the other person's body and what's happening exactly in the moment. And before trying to add all those other things, we need to start there. And that's, again, there's no education around this. And women are just as in the same boat as men about it. Most women don't know or understand how their bodies work, either like the anatomy itself or what it is that actually turns them on. And we end up applying a sort of a male lens to what we think is going to turn women on inadvertently. I've seen that this is a really common thread, and that we kind of have an idea of what can turn men on pretty easily. Now, I also find every time I talk about the 3 phases of female arousal, I end up hearing that the men say, actually, I feel those things too. So it's not completely about women. However, men can kind of like skip ahead in the steps way more easily than women can. So knowing some of those things, for example, like most men can get easily aroused by either just seeing something that is exciting or direct physical stimulation. So in particular,
Very confirmed.
So knowing what it feels like for them, it's not surprising that a lot of men would imagine that if they wanted to turn on a woman, that say reaching down and stimulating her in the genital area might do the same thing for her that it does for him. But that's almost never the case. And it's not surprising, and it's totally understandable. But for women, it actually tends to have the opposite effect. When something comes out of the blue and starts trying to connect with us down there, it can be very jarring, and it can have a negative effect on the arousal. So I've kind of identified it as 3 phases of female arousal that really helps to understand that there's a sequence that needs to occur. And in different situations, it can occur quickly, it can occur slowly. If you have a really good rapport, sometimes you can almost jump to phase 2, like because you know everything's good and you've had this like consistent success and you trust the person, and you can always slow down and come back and correct course if you've gone too far. But it's kind of like the first phase is essentially the emotional safety relaxation phase. She needs to be able to get out of her mind and into her body. And if there are 1,000 things that could be keeping her in her mind, and if she's struggling to get into the body, it may require some detective work from him to help figure out what's necessary to do that. But it can't be skipped. If she doesn't get into her body first, if she's not there, then anything that tries to physically stimulate her is going to have the detrimental impact. And once she is in that state, her whatever else was going on has been allowed to move along, and she's connecting to her body. The second thing that actually starts to turn us on the most, again, not physical stimulation, is actually feeling the desire from our partner, from the man who made us feel safe and relaxed and comfortable and connected.
So this is phase 2.
That's phase 2. Yeah, phase 2 is actually more about feeling the desire from him once we're in that receptive state, and he's contributed to it by bringing his like full embodied presence to that moment as well. And then the third phase is where physical stimulation actually does start to come into play, because we, like men, do have a lot of erectile tissue in our genital area. It doesn't produce as much of a visible response, so we don't think about it as much. But we definitely get more pleasure and sensation when that is given the time and stimulation to engorge. But again, hands are not the best tool for this. People tend to, again, think the same way. What you really want is a full body connection as much as possible. So when I think about what I want to feel down there, it's the most broad, encompassing sensation possible. A thigh is the perfect tool in many cases, something where we're intertwined and connected, and I feel completely like covered and safe and encompassed. The hands are busy holding me close and continuing that reassurance of the emotional connection and support. And so all 3 phases are actually happening at the same time at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to what we were saying previously, you were saying most people when they aren't happy in the bedroom, they're thinking they need to spice things up. And a lot of times that means go faster or do something like very different or ramp things up. And what it sounds like is costumes, whatever.
All those things.
But or being performative, like maybe to some extent, right? But slowing things down is actually where the real magic happens.
Absolutely.
And of course, the concept of being present, again, an ongoing theme here
absolutely.
in our podcast, being present, being aware, and not, again, I think I used this example when we were at dinner, but not looking at a woman as like a switchboard with a bunch of buttons to hit. Sorry, Jimmy, out there, but a switchboard with a bunch of buttons to hit. and switches, but instead like feeling the reciprocal mutual energy that is being exchanged back and forth is what's critical. And then there was one more thing I was going to say as far as that's concerned, but I'm drawing a blank.
Well, that's absolutely something that's key as well. As I said, the request that I would always get involves the man wanting to please the woman. And this idea of needing to please someone leads to a very non-present, analytical, agenda-focused approach. Just like you said, it what ends up happening is it feels like he's looking for the buttons to push
Yeah.
to try to turn her on. And we don't like feeling like a bunch of buttons to be pushed. And so contrary to this idea about like trying to please your partner, what I encourage people to think about is what you really want to do is focus on enjoying your partner and tuning in as much as possible to your own feelings, sensations, wants, desires, like what you want to do, what you want to feel, and paying just enough attention to make sure that they are also enjoying that as much as you are. So I ballpark it like 75-25. 75% of your attention should actually be on what you're feeling, what you're noticing. If your hand is on my leg, it should be because you want to feel the skin and the fabric and the curve and the connection and just enjoy and appreciate how amazing it is to have this under your hand and connected to the person that you're with. Not, is this like, do I,
Where's the spot?
where's the
Yeah.
spot? Yeah, no. So,
Yeah.
The next thing I wanted to get to, like sort of to that point, is I know we're going to probably get into the gas and brake analogy here, and the red lights and or the yellow lights and green lights, which I love this analogy too. But you said a few weeks ago that this is very different from like a Me Too ask for consent kind of process as well, which is where maybe the pendulum has swung for an extended period of time. We hear that a lot, especially from our female friends that were like, guys they don't know how to progress forward. It's either way too aggressive or it's almost like non-existent. So finding that balance is critical. So I'd love to hear you get a little bit more into
for
that
sure.
part.
Yeah. It's never sat completely right with me the way that the verbal consent process has become so prominent as kind of a result around the Me Too stuff. My least favorite question ever is, can I kiss you? Because it's, if you can't tell, the answer is no. So there's so much that it does a disservice to the nonverbal communication that we should be expressing and noticing and tuning into when we're connecting with somebody.
It
That kills
demonstrates
the vibe.
It demonstrates a lack of presence.
Exactly. It says basically, I don't know what signals you're giving me. I'm, essentially
me.
clueless about this, and that's not great. When a partner is really tuned in to what is happening for you and noticing this, it could be a good time to start getting into the green light, yellow lights. And that was actually the first piece of this analogy that I thought of that became the whole driving in the driver's seat analogy. So, looking at it from the perspective of the confident, masculine person in the equation leading the action, it's, your woman wants you to take her on a sensual journey. She wants you in the driver's seat. She wants to be in the passenger seat a lot of the time. Once she has the experience that you're a really skilled, confident driver and knows what that's like with you, there may be times when you want to, swap roles. But the initial thing that's going to help her feel excited and comfortable is experiencing that you're a really good driver in taking her on this journey. And it was really, people focus on the destination. The only metric that anyone can think to use in terms of success and pleasing is orgasms. But the better thing to do is really set that to the side, because what you need to do is keep your eyes on the road directly in front of you. That's the presence part. We need to be focusing on what's happening exactly right now and adjusting based on that. And if we do that, then the odds of getting to the destination will go way up compared to just focusing on the destination.
For both of you.
So, yes. Yes. So I like to think of it as the driver is looking for signals, in this case, not from the road outside, but from his passenger, essentially, that are the green lights and yellow lights. And if you're careful with noticing green and yellow lights and judiciously, cautiously applying the accelerator or the brake, you won't run into red lights too often. That essentially symbolizes you've made a bigger mistake. You've probably run a bunch of yellow lights, and you're not in sync with this. It's also the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness. So when you're receiving a bunch of green lights from your partner, that's your cue to use the accelerator pedal gently, a little bit at a time. And as you tap on the accelerator pedal, then you keep paying attention and you say, do the lights stay green? You don't say, you notice, do the lights stay green? If that's the case, you hang out there for a little bit and then you tap on the accelerator a little bit again. That's the invitation. If she's giving you green lights, then things are working. And it's there's an invitation to continue the excitement, continue the escalation. On the other hand, if you're getting a yellow light, then that's a suggestion to probably tap the brake pedal gently. Again, you don't slam on the brakes, but you adjust a little bit, you slow down a little bit. If you don't get back to green lights, you might have to start asking a question, because if she's in yellow light territory, she's already pretty much gone back to being in her mind and not in her body. Something is pulling her back there. The easiest way to understand a green light versus a yellow light is just whether the energy that you're bringing is being matched equally or not. So if somebody's arms are around me and I wrap my arms back around them, they give me a squeeze and I squeeze back. They press into me and I press my body against them. They nuzzle their, cheek against my forehead and I press back. I make little sounds like or sighs or things like that. I'm matching that energy. And even when it comes to kissing, if we shift into a position where we're face to face and we're like this far apart and I'm making eye contact and I'm looking, at eyes and lips and I'm staying right here and he ever so slightly starts to move closer and I don't move away, I'm still matching this. I'm like, I'm staying here. I'm with you. This is your, if I didn't want this, I would turn my head. I would pull away. Something, that would be your yellow light. So when there's a failure to match the energy, then you're in a yellow light. So if there's a, limp ragdoll, she may be just exhausted. It could just be that. Or, something else could be going on. But there's no response or any kind of a pulling away sounds that are not happy sounding sounds like, anything where there is a lack of response. And, again, as long as you're making small adjustments, you can test things a little bit and see if you get because sometimes it might not be 100% clear, especially to somebody who's just starting to learn how to perceive these things. So you just gently test and experiment and see if the lights turn more green or more yellow. And, if you're in the yellow territory and you're at a loss, then good check-in questions actually are ones that allow the person to give any kind of answer and not feel like there's going to be a judgment or they're not going to hurt your feelings. So something like, how are you feeling? Or is there anything on your mind? Or is there anything you need from me right now? That sort of thing. So when, getting a sense of speeding up, slowing down, and checking in if necessary.
As opposed to does this feel good?
That's a terrible check-in question. It's a great example of a terrible check-in question.
That's why I asked it, just to be clear.
Perfect. Because the chances that you're going to get an accurate answer to that question are not very good. Because if somebody says, does this feel good? Well, compared to what? And if I say no, are you going to be offended or are you going to stop doing what you're doing? I don't want this to end. I don't want to ruin the mood. So I might say, that feels good. I wouldn't, but a lot of people would.
For sure. A lot of people would, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you probably took some cues from the last coffee meeting that we had a couple weeks ago.
For sure. We've been together for almost or over 20 years now, going on 21. And Jared is very passionate. He's all gas.
I got
you
breaks.
are. What?
I got breaks.
You have some breaks. But I'll be doing something and he's in the mood. He wants to go and he comes from behind all the time.
I'm squirming now.
Huh?
All right, I'm squirming over.
Don't squirm. And he'll come from behind and start making out with me and it's like an aggressive makeout. And I'm like, I'm just in the middle of something. I'm like, oh, hold on. Okay. But I felt empowered and I felt like really like, I was like, hey, like slow down a little. Like, let's ease into this. And it makes total sense when we talked last time and you just brought it up now about making the woman feel safe, feeling and being present and making her feel desired. Like that is 100% like the best sexual experience, I think personally.
And I took the feedback.
You did.
And I actually I appreciated it, honestly, because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You're right.
You want to make the experience better too.
Yeah,
So of
exactly,
course you want, to have
I'm
this
not like every other
information.
guy. Yeah.
No, but like it was like I was like, oh, I'm gonna like, and normally I would just be like, okay, like yeah, like I'll get into it real quick. But I was like, well, no, let me like, let's ease into this and like experience it and make it slow and sensual and
I genuinely
It was nice.
appreciated it. I like really did. I was like, okay, yeah, I like that. I like the back and forth and like the calibrating together. It was cool. It was cool.
I love it. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that you guys have already gotten to apply things.
oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And it's easier when she says, yo, slow down versus having to read all
Yeah.
the yellow lights.
Yeah, and for sure,
Of course,
we
I'm,
can.
I'm half joking.
No, we can help out if the more, because this is a big part of what I do too, is I do hands-on training with people and showing like, this is what it feels like. Did you notice how I stopped making as much sound as I was just there? Did you notice how I stiffened up in this way? Did you feel me pull back? Like cueing into the little things like that. And we can verbally share these things. If the message isn't getting through, we're going to need to keep sharing a little bit more information until we do start figuring it out together. So there's absolutely room for that kind of, back and forth and communication. And the other thing too is to remember that a yellow light and having to use the brakes is not bad.
Yes.
It's not a problem. What it is she needs something else from you right this moment other than direct escalation in the direction you were going. And it's actually one of the best tools for creating trust and comfort and that sense of safety. That's like, oh, okay, I wasn't 100% ready right now. He noticed it. He slowed down. He's so in tune with me. He gets me. He's there for me. It's so good. Like when you use the brakes well, I mean, it's almost, and sometimes it's better than using the gas well.
Yeah.
So yeah, they work in sync, and yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's like, it's knowing, the signals that you're getting and how to
You're
respond.
riding the wave. You're learning how to ride the wave. Did you have anything that you wanted to?
Not right now. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, with as much of the time that we can, with what's remaining, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what your practice looks like now. Like, what is your sessions with your clients look like? How does that work? And then also, I know that you have different client avatars that
Oh
you
yeah,
shared
I love
with
the
us, and I
avatars.
think those are kind of fun
Yeah.
to hear about.
So my practice evolved from, again, my experience was trying to learn from the entertainment industry and figuring out how to take what wasn't working about that and do something better. So I actually left Nevada in 2020 because COVID shut it down. And so it kind of changed my opportunities there. I switched for a couple of years into professional cuddling. A friend of mine introduced me to that, and that also taught me a ton of things about what if you take the sexual outcome off of the table, what kind of presence and intimacy can be created when you put that aside, at least temporarily.
Can you talk more about that? I
Yeah,
would
what
really
is
like
that?
to hear
For
more
sure.
about that.
Yeah. Well, when we're thinking, again, about the destination, we're not keeping our eyes on the road, essentially. And so there is a whole industry of professional cuddling, which is intended to be platonic connection. A lot of it, unfortunately, still does end up being, euphemistically used for other things. But the idea is creating, close physical contact, not trying to pursue the sexual outcome, but just for the benefits of touch and closeness and oxytocin and just human connection. So I did spend a few years also doing that, and that was very informative to understand a lot of things. interestingly enough, what fits into this so well is that one of the best possible ways to get turned on and to do foreplay is really cuddling. And in fact, when we're talking about what my practice is like, when I do hands-on training with people, I use cuddling as the strategy for our introductory session. And essentially I say, we're going to start with working on presence and connection, and I'm going to give you guidance and feedback on what's happening, what I'm noticing in myself, what I'm noticing in you, how things are going. We're going to talk about the signals, the yellow lights, green lights, and so on. And I'm going to give you the information that you need to turn me on. And what I need to feel from you is that you can get me 100% aroused without ever taking my clothes off. And that is going to show you that what we think of as foreplay, most of it is not actually useful in the progression that we need to feel to go through those 3 phases. So I do. A few years ago, a friend started sending some people my way who it was clear that they were looking for help, but they needed someone to work with in a for direct experience and guidance, who was willing to have open boundaries for them to be able to explore things that they couldn't with anybody else. And there is some existing very small industry around this that uses the term surrogate partner therapy to represent what they do. And that started being something that I was gravitating in the direction of how to show up and use my knowledge of what really works for me to teach somebody what to do. And then to use that, essentially this basic recipe, as something that they could then apply. And with the, always the caveat of everybody's different, this would still be a better starting point and a baseline to understand essentially how, to connect. So I do start out by, and I do just coaching, virtually as well. Sometimes it only ends up being that. But for people who want to work with me in person, we start with a connection that is around that. We start with the boundary, all right, clothes stay on, and we're going to explore how we connect like this, all the feedback that's necessary, and you're going to see how you can turn somebody on in this way.
I'm like blown away by that for so many reasons. A, because it resonates with me because I'm a big cuddler. I love I love cuddling.
Yeah.
And when you
some of our best sex starts with just us cuddling.
I was thinking that.
Yeah,
and the
absolutely,
reason
for sure.
is, to your point, I started with the intention of cuddling, not the intention of sex.
Right.
And it's a very different progression. It's an
And it's
incredibly
playing
different
with
progression.
the hair or rubbing my arm and just
Yeah.
caressing. Then that just automatically, then it's a small make out, and then it's just slowly
100%.
When
evolves.
you said taking the outcome out of it,
Mhm.
that you probably saw it on camera. I was like, oh wow! I had a light bulbs go off. That was not part of what we had not talked about that yet. So that was the first I've heard about that. And that's really
exactly. So
fascinating.
it's the perfect example of you are just getting into that presence. You are not it. The sex outcome is not in the front of your mind. You're like, how am I connecting, noticing, appreciating, touching, feeling? When you start to get into the presence of your body with that person there, with no agenda whatsoever, that is in many ways the best way to start drawing us into our body. And so you get present, we start to get more present, and then that first phase, for us starts to, we start to get green lights in that. You start to feel that, and then you start to get turned on in the situation. We start to feel that. I forgot to mention when I talk about phase 2, I like to call it lips and hips. So, and that, as far as hips, feeling your erection is a signal from the part of you that actually gets turned on. That's another thing about hands, that your hands are not the part of you that's getting aroused.
Yeah.
When we want to feel your desire and your excitement for us, we want to feel it from the parts of your body that are actually, feeling that and yearning and wanting those things. It's also, when we do this, we're matching up our body parts, this your lips to my lips, your hips to my hips, arms and everything around each other. It's a much more connected, full body experience. Most of the things that people do as foreplay after they get naked involve separating the bodies and mix and matching body parts, which are great, fun things to do. But I don't tend to think of them as foreplay. I tend to think of those things more as afterplay, or in the driving analogy, the detours and the scenic route. So as opposed to the more direct route, which cuddling is, in my opinion, the most direct route, this full body connection.
Yeah.
We start with the presence, the desire starts to come in. We're already in a connection that is conducive to the physical stimulation we need. And then we get completely turned on. And then all that's left to do is get the clothes out of the way so that we can, just go into it from there. And if we stop to do anything else at that point, we're actually going to end up slowing down. At least, I don't know for sure on the male side, but on the female side, if you stop to go down on me at that point, I'm like, where did everything go? I was so connected to every part of you. And now all I feel is this isolated sensation, and you're way down there. And, so.
And I'm all the way up here with my head.
And yes. So you have shifted at that point into you're back in the analytical, and you've gone
Maybe that's
out
why
of
they call
the
it
body.
So
yeah.
I guess I do again. I want to get into the avatars, but
Okay.
as we're having this conversation, I'm wondering how have you verified this or got a general consensus from other women as far as like,
I mean, I can
yes, I totally agree with
testify to
all of
this.
this, or like what has been your
Yeah.
process to, I guess, make sure this is at least generally applicable?
Almost everybody that I talk to about it seems to agree when I
Okay.
describe these things.
100%. Like once you said that, like you're hugging and it's like, and it makes sense where it lines up or it's phase 2, like cuddling and you're making out and you're just like holding each other. And then like I start to feel like your erection. It's like an instant turn on for me. It's like, all right, he's turned on. Let's do this. Like, it's so like you
totally.
said that, and I was like, "Where's my light bulb?" I was like, yeah, that's exactly what
that's
happens.
the moment that we want to feel that, and it's a huge turn on.
Yeah,
Are
and
there-
you're so and you're feminine at that point because you feel so like loved and lusted after, and you feel safe. Like it is green lights, green lights, green lights.
Yep.
Are there clients who get held back in the first phase, who get held back in just the cuddling phase until they get it
You
right?
gotta get out of
That
their head.
happens sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a couple times. I mean, usually when people reach out to me, they're in the mindset to learn at this point. They're, I have enough information online, and they usually disqualify themselves before they meet me in that case. But yeah, once in a while, it does take a couple of times before somebody really starts fully grasping it. So.
Okay. So maybe that's a great foray into the different types of
Yeah.
avatars,
folks that
yes.
you're into. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are 3 top types of clients that I see the most of, and I ChatGPT helped me come up with some like cute
Okay.
names for them, right? So
I wanted to give you credit so bad.
We'll edit that out.
we worked together on this. So okay, so the first one I call aspiring Adam. This is usually a younger guy, usually 20s to 30s. The challenge is around a lack of experience. Either hasn't had any or many relationships, might still be a virgin, might have had challenging experiences, a lot of anxiety, and so there's never been a good example in his life of feeling knowledgeable or confident, and just needing something to go on to. In many cases, the anxiety around not knowing what to do will prevent them from actually trying to date at all. So what I find is in that category, we're trying to help them feel like they have some idea of what would I do with a woman if I had one, and then that kind of starts to open the doors to say, okay, well, I could actually talk to him, and I could possibly try dating because I wouldn't feel like I was at a complete loss if she wanted to come home with me. So we have aspiring Adam who's trying to learn from inexperience. Then we have what I call brave Benjamin. So this is somebody who's probably in his 40s or 50s, and he has suffered a setback. It may have been, could have been the death of a spouse. It could have been a divorce. It could have been some kind of medical or injury or something that happened to him. Many times these scenarios too are preceded by a long drawn out period where intimacy has reduced. So he feels like he's been out of the game for so long. He is not sure if he still has it. He's not sure if he still has his mojo, and feels like he needs kind of a refresher to bring him back into the confidence that he may have once had, but it's been a long time. And so he's needing that support. And then the third category is what I call committed Charles. And he has been married for about 20 to 30 years at this point, 35, maybe even 50s, 60s, sometimes even early 70s at this point. And, he's been with his wife this whole time. He loves her. He cares about her. They have a great relationship. They have a shared life and hobbies and kids, and there's all this that's going for them. But she's lost interest in intimacy over time, and he can't figure out why, because, of course, all he ever wanted was to please her. So, of course, chances are the trouble was he came in with that agenda every time, that being in his head, coming into, find the buttons to push, didn't know about the phases. So he's at a breaking point, though. Either something has to change, or he's either got to, the inability to express this part of himself is killing him. And he's either got to find an outlet for it in some way in order to continue to show up in the relationship, or figure out what he needs to do to bring her back on board, or he's eventually going to have to decide that he can't live out the rest of his life this way. So he's in a really tough place and trying to figure out what to do about that. So I often, try to share the answer, why has my wife lost interest in intimacy? Because she learned to distrust your touch over all this time, because every time that you tried to connect with her, she felt this agenda about it. She didn't feel you coming in with the presence. And so that repeated experience caused her to move away and away to where, affectionate touch in daily life isn't typically, something that happens anymore, because she doesn't trust that you're not trying to get something, despite, again, all you ever wanted to do was please her. And she instead has felt like this experience is about you and not her, because you never tapped into that presence.
I see you
that's
nodding.
powerful.
I see you nodding over there. Well,
But it's just power. Like, that is a powerful statement. Like, get out of your head and be present. And it's not like to please her. It's not a mission. It's like, be present with her. It's a shared experience.
Well,
1000%.
I appreciate you having the conversation with us a few weeks ago, because you've slowed me down, and I do not want to be committed Charlie in the next decade or two. So we'll obviously calibrate and continue to calibrate and make sure that you don't feel like I'm just trying to push your switchboard button. This was like an absolutely incredible conversation. This was fantastic. This was even better than I was super pumped about it, and even was better than I thought. So I genuinely thank you so much for being here. What's next for you, and where can people find information about you? What projects where can people find you? What do you have going on as far as like next steps?
Yeah. Well, I hope we're going to be doing some workshopping things together.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
We were talking about having you at a retreat, but we just don't have the time to squeeze it in, given the time that we
Yeah,
have.
we
But
want to make
in a
sure we
week,
have
yeah.
enough time.
this is something
Yeah.
where it's like we would want to do something where this is kind of the focus.
Absolutely.
almost, you
Yeah,
know?
great.
Mhm.
So in the meantime, I have my client-facing website is evolvesessions.com. There's no D in it. I'll maybe try to get that domain as well. So people who are looking to work with me directly can, go on there, learn some things, and, set up a discovery call, fill out my intake form if they want to, talk to me directly.
A lot of cool resources there.
Yeah, I've got some articles coming up there. I am trying to coalesce a lot of it into a book format of in the driver's seat, the driving analogy, and kind of put all that together. Even the 3 phases articles on there. So that's available. The more overarching big picture is this, sexuality is one of the pillars of our holistic, healthy life. It happens to be the one that I've specialized in more than, other people in the industry. So recivilizedwoman.com is where I kind of try to bring it together in seeing not only the sexuality piece, but how all of the other pieces of our life feed into that, whether it's the nutrition and fitness and mental health. People who come struggling with ED don't realize how much that's impacting them, that their metabolic health is critical and things like that. So a lot of the things that we do to take care of ourselves and reduce the evolutionary mismatches and health problems in our lives are also things that we need to do to support a healthy, thriving sex life too. So those are evolvesessions.com, recivilizedwoman.com, and book that I'm working on, and then hopefully our collaborations.
Yes.
Can't wait. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you again. We'll have a lot more conversations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rat by the wheel.